Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please take this opportunity to silence all communication devices. Thank you for your cooperation.
Good morning, everyone. I figured in lieu of my jokes that I would just bring my little ones out here to say good morning to you guys, to keep things fresh. They're far cuter than I am, so. Our first speaker is Airbnb's North American Policy Director, who also is a former mayor. He leads the company's work with policymakers in the US and Canada to support common sense approaches that protect the right of everyday people to share their homes to help make ends meet. He also helps to educate the public about the community-wide economic benefits that home sharing creates. Please join me in welcoming
Mike Singer.
Mike Singer, yes, thank
you. Okay, well, thank you for having me. I want to thank Mayor Suarez, I think, for creating an impossible platform there to live up to. I have two 8-year-old boys, but I'm not sure they're quite that cute. So as a former mayor of Charlottesville, Virginia, it is wonderful to be back with the conference. During my very first winter meeting in 2017, we were invited to the East Wing, and I still remember it. President Barack Obama greeted us, and he had this huge smile, and he goes, "So, Any of y'all feeling underappreciated recently? And it was a real mayor joke. I am delighted to be here with you today to talk about Airbnb, where I lead the work of our North America policy team. I have been personally excited about this company ever since the platform enabled my youngest sister to survive and live in New York City and Brooklyn as a freelance writer for a couple of years. In 2017, then, when I was the mayor of Charlottesville, the company took action to ban white supremacists from coming to the city for the notorious and violent Unite the Right rally. That was a tech company taking bold public action for all the right reasons, and I continue to see that sort of ethic reflected every day at the company. Mayors today, as you know, are faced with the challenges of a changing world. You face ongoing impacts from the pandemic, a potentially recessionary climate, and balancing budgets and providing for your constituents. Airbnb, the company, was born out of that kind of economic need. When our founders, to help pay the rent, they opened up their home in San Francisco to 3 strangers. And that idea has never held greater promise than today. I am here to tell you that we are here to help. By bringing needed tax revenue into your coffers, by economically empowering thousands of your constituents, by helping them to make money from the spare bedroom in their house or the unused basement apartment. We announced last year Airbnb-friendly apartments, which is an exciting initiative that opens up multifamily apartments to Airbnb. And that allows folks to afford their lease payments and save money for a mortgage, for college and university payments. And we're also working with local stakeholders like each of you to address the nation's affordable and workforce housing crisis on a hyperlocal basis. For instance, we recently worked in the state of Colorado to drive a successful ballot initiative that will send more transient occupancy taxes to local affordable housing funds and not just into the promotion of tourism, heads and beds. We've made dozens of other investments in local stakeholder-driven initiatives. We've funded transitional housing for dozens of fellows working through the congressional Hispanic, Asian, and Pacific American and Black caucuses right here in Washington. This initiative helps young professionals from historically marginalized communities get their footing in the quarters of Congress. Additionally, we're partnering with local Habitat for Humanity chapters from Nashville to Miami on projects that will create more housing supply, which we all know is really at the root of this problem. In Virginia, our support enabled the Virginia Housing Alliance to hire a new staff member to research how local planning commissions and zoning boards can enable access to workforce and affordable housing projects. We are deeply proud, on top of all that, about the work that we do to contribute to local budgets. To take just one example, in Nashville, Tennessee, short-term rentals generated over $22 million last fiscal year in local lodging tax revenue. And over $3 million of that went to help fund their local housing trust fund. And nationally, we remitted $1.5 billion in tax revenue in 2021. We truly are a community. I say that authentically. We've got a bunch of our staff here today. It's an amazing community of professionals, and we want to partner with you as members of your communities. Our team of policy professionals works every day with mayors, city managers, economic development directors, and city attorneys to craft regulations that meet the needs of your communities. In short, we are here to work with you, and we would love to be in touch. Thanks for your leadership. Thanks to Mayor Suarez and Mayor Woodards for their leadership and for your service to your communities. You are appreciated. I hope to meet some of you after this. Thanks very much.
All right, so they're back. And it's because my daughter does not feel like she had a large enough role in the last. So we're gonna expand her role a little bit. Our next speaker is not only a strong member of our organization and chair of our Women Mayors Leadership Alliance, Gloriana, but she recently took over as president of our sister organization, the National League of Cities. NLC has been a true partner on legislation advocacy, and we are now working together on implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure law through the Bloomberg-funded Local Infrastructure Hub. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Victoria Wooder.
Mayor Victoria Wooder.
There you go.
my notes it says you'll be introduced by the voice of God, and I said that must be Francis Suarez. But then to have his daughter say my name, how cool is that? Honestly, she got my name right more than most adults get my last name right. So I might have to bring her with me as I continue to travel. But good morning, everyone. Where are my West Coast people? Are you all feeling the burn right about now? We got to do something about always having to come to the East Coast. Because right now, when I got up this morning, it was 4 a.m. at home. But still delighted, and this is worthwhile to travel to continue to be in this great partnership. Already said, I am proud to stand here before you representing 19,000 cities, towns, and villages across the United States as the National League of Cities' new president. And I can't tell you what an honor it is for me to serve in that capacity. But for me, it wasn't a choice whether it was NLC and USCM. It absolutely had to be both, because I cannot overstate the importance of the partnership and the work that's done between our two organizations. And together, we have achieved so much. At the height of the pandemic, you all know America's local leaders stepped up. Whether they were mayors, council members, or city managers, they took charge, and we got to work in the midst of this unprecedented crisis. And folks, the reason we were so successful in doing that is because of the strong support that our organizations provided all of us back home. Together, USCM and NLC worked hard to jump into action and get the America Rescue Plan Act passed by Congress and written into law to bring transformative changes directly to all of our communities so that we could build back even better from the pandemic. This year, my theme as president is people, partnerships, and possibilities. Because I believe if we can engage our people and leverage great partnerships like the one between NLC and USCM, that together we can create unlimited and unprecedented possibilities for our community and for the United States of America. Because not once we got ARPA done, not even a year later, we did the same with the bipartisan infrastructure law, enabling cities, towns, and villages across the nation to map out programs and projects to help rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. Today, together, we're providing resources and assistance to help communities access those funds that were brought into law, and that doesn't stop there. Through the Inflation Reduction Act, we work together to get funding for cities to develop new clean energy projects and to work to meet their climate goals. We successfully lobbied for the CHIPS Act, which is already investing in strong communities across the country. We've accomplished all of this together because we know we can get more done together than we can get done separately, and that's why it's so important for us to continue this partnership. As a mayor myself, I can say with certainty that the work we've seen on the ground has been incredible thus far, but we still have work to do, and we have to stick together to be able to do that work and be successful, not for us individually, but for the communities and those who are depending on us every day in our own cities. We must continue to show that funneling dollars directly to city leadership can have a monumental effect. Nobody knows our communities better than us, and nobody knows the needs of our community better than us. So as we prove to the federal government, give it to cities, we can put it to work quicker, we can change lives quicker, and we can make our communities better quicker if they give it to us. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored to be a member of both organizations and look forward to the year ahead as we continue to partner together. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference.
I figured, you know, you might be interested in knowing who the mom was. And definitely want to continue to keep this interesting, and she's far more interesting than I am. So thank you, Mayor Woodard, for all your work at the National League of Cities. You know, we love you and we partner with you and we thank you. And now on to our DollarWise Innovation Grant Award. As the Economic Mobility campaign of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, DollarWise works with cities to remove barriers to upward mobility and create intergenerational wealth. This year, DollarWise will award 8 cities with $10,000 each to help create innovative programs that can be adopted by others. I am pleased to announce this year's winners. Actually, my wife will be pleased to announce this year's winners. So please hold your applause till the end.
Good morning. Arlington Mayor Jim Ross will use an innovation grant to assist families facing eviction. Chattanooga Mayor Tim Kelly will provide residents with expanding broadband access and digital literacy. And Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb will be offering services to residents with marijuana convictions. Kansas City, you didn't tell me it was gonna be this long. Kansas City, Missouri Mayor Quinton Lucas will help underdeserved entrepreneurs access financial resources. And lastly,
she's like, I'm done. Lansing Mayor Andy Shore will provide employment and wraparound services for returning citizens. Lima Mayor Sharetta Smith will provide pre-employment education and technical assistance to small business owners. Louisville Mayor Craig Greenberg will train women who are immigrants and refugees to become licensed child care providers. And Reno Mayor Hillary Sheevy's program will offer veterinary care for services animals owned by veterans, seniors, and residents with disabilities. You see, it's a mouthful. This is a tough job, right? Especially when you have no advanced planning, you had no idea you were gonna do this, and you had no chance to read the script before.
At all.
Very good. Everybody, let's give her a round of applause. Please join me in congratulating each of our winning mayors and testing my wife's abilities on the spot. Thank you. Now here's a video about DollarWise projects that you may want to implement in your own cities.
The first thing I'll tell you about Youngstown, the special thing is the people. We are a legacy city. We were rich in steel almost 50 years ago. And when we talk about the economic mobility, the one piece is that how do we get individuals into the workforce? What are some of the barriers? How do we remove it? And then how do we grow our economics as a city?
Well, I really didn't consider the workforce. No credentials. I didn't graduate high school, so I thought I would die in the street.
I guarantee you at least once or twice a month, individuals say, Mayor, I want a job. There's 3 questions I'll ask. You have a resume, do you pass a drug test, and do you have a driver's license? And many individuals that tell me, I passed the drug test, I have a resume, my driver's license are under suspension. So that stops you right there.
The license is a big component, because I was getting driving suspensions as I was getting my life together.
And we realized that those individuals are still gonna drive because they still gotta try to provide for their family. They still got places they need to be. And we were finding many of those individuals who were being incarcerated because that barrier was not removed. And when this DollarWise came out and I sat down with my team, I'm like, we can do something real impactful.
At that point, I didn't know he instituted this particular program. Me getting my license back was a major, major hurdle. And you guys set the foundation, and we're very appreciative. I don't got the capacity to articulate how thankful I am.
In 2019, Boston had fewer than 500 family childcare providers. As a city with more than 30,000 young people under the age of 5, we knew this gap needed to be filled. That's why our Office of Women's Advancement and the Economic Mobility Lab developed our Childcare Entrepreneurship Fund, or CEF. CEF has two goals: to improve conditions for childcare providers and their staff, and to empower our littlest learners and their families. We were thrilled to receive the DollarWise Innovation Grant to support that mission. I'm so grateful to the U.S. Conference of Mayors for awarding us this grant, which has helped us provide funding, coaching, and business training to even more childcare providers across our city.
Before that grant, my daycare was functional, but it wasn't fully functional. I felt I was missing something extra I wanted to put into my daycare. We have received the childcare grant, and that grant was very, very helpful in building not just my daycare, but other providers out there that needed the funds at the time. I was able to do a lot with the funds in taking my daycare to a higher level. I can add that this fund really, really helped our community and our city a whole lot.
When our littlest learners do well, we all do well.
I was a kid in this city that, went to Hudson's as a store, who remembers auto plants and the like, and we lost the auto jobs, we lost restaurants, we lost movie theaters. It seems like everything was taken away from us for decades.
Mr. Mayor, how did Project Clean Slate come about?
Well, the city of Detroit has had to compete to get jobs back. The way we have been able to convince companies to come here is we say we've got a good workforce, willing to work, talented, and in order to make sure we have people to fill these jobs, it means we had to convince employers to be background friendly, that those folks who had served their time, had been released, they get a fresh start.
I come from that era where we just was out being knuckleheads. I remember being in jail and my daughter was 8 days old and I was trying to figure out, like, what am I gonna tell her? I went in front of a judge one time and she looked at me and was like, this is the absolute last chance you're gonna get here.
A huge part of our economic success is getting people with criminal backgrounds into the workforce.
There was places that was turning me down that I don't want to name, but that anybody could get into. But I couldn't get in because I had a felony record. Produces a lack of hope.
You got to get background checks, you got to get records, you got to do all of these things.
It was Clean Slate reaching out to me, and that was a turning point for me. And I keep bumping into these areas, and I'm looking at them and saying, wow, my record is clean, and now I can do this. Or like the idea that I'm a truck driver. A couple years back, we went to Niagara Falls, and my daughter, she looked across the falls and she said, "Daddy, what's that over there?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's the Canada side. We'll go there one year too." As soon as it came out my mouth, I was just thinking like, "Wow, why did I say that?" Maybe a year and a half, 2 years later, my record is clean, and we just went to Canada, and so that's another area where I look back and say, "Oh, that's Clean Slate." Oh.
What was that feeling like when you were able to fulfill on your promise to your daughter?
So, it means so much for me.
But I only have one favor to ask of you. So when your trucking company continues to grow, gets big and successful, don't be moving out of the city to the suburbs, all right? I want this growing company in the city of Detroit.
Yeah, no, I'll be here. I'm a long hauler, like. Yeah.
I'm all out of family members. My dad didn't come on this trip. And now, please welcome Abigail Hollingsworth, Senior Vice President of Bank of America Charitable Foundation, founding sponsor of the Mayor's Dollar Wise campaign.
Thank you so much, Mayor Suarez, for introducing your beautiful family. Man, I wish I could compete with that. And congratulations to our Dollar Wise winners. We are so excited for all the great work you're doing in communities. Bank of America and mayors have a common purpose. We all want to make our communities better places to live by improving the financial lives of our customers and your constituents. We are proud to sponsor the U.S. Conference of Mayors and partner with individual mayors all over the country to make this possible. A key part of the work that we do in communities is to provide education, training, and support to low to moderate income individuals to help them get family-sustaining careers that lead to intergenerational wealth. A great example of that is our partnership in Hartford. We work with Mayor Bronin's Summer Youth Employment Initiative with Capital Workforce Partners. This program is providing career exposure, real-life work experience, and financial education to ensure youth are prepared for the jobs of tomorrow. Another example is in Arizona, where as part of our $1.2 billion commitment to racial equality, we've worked with ASU to provide more opportunities for diverse students to get into post-secondary careers or post-secondary education and career opportunities. We are so grateful for the partnership with all of you, and we hope we can do more together. Thank you so much for the great work you're doing in cities, and congratulations to all of our winners.
Ms. Hollingworth, we are grateful for your foundation's support. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the Senior Vice President, Legal and Interim General Counsel of Crown Castle. Prior to that role, he led teams that managed litigation, investigations, and legal issues related to the company's real estate transactions. He also led the legal project team charged with addressing and clearing barriers to deployment of tower and network assets. Please join me in welcoming Teddy Adams.
Thank you for having me. You know, if I'd known we could bring our wives and kids, I would have brought mine. They're both better looking and more entertaining than I am. Well, thank you for having us. Crown Castle is the nation's leading telecommunications infrastructure provider. I can tell by your faces you're asking, what is telecommunications infrastructure? It is the backbone of networks that provide connectivities in cities and communities around the country. Through our 40,000 towers, 85,000 miles of fiber, and 115,000 small cells, we enable the wireless communication that mobile carriers, public safety officials, residents, and businesses rely on every day. And we know that communities want this connectivity. We asked folks around the country what they thought about new technologies and advances in cell phones. 74% of the general population said that they wanted small cells in their communities. It's not a big surprise. It's not just so folks can download Stranger Things more quickly, but they know that connectivity saves lives. More than 80% of all 911 calls are made from a mobile device. Fast and reliable connectivity helps people reach police officers, fire departments, EMTs, and other first responders in times of crisis. Now, what are folks doing to help expand broadband? As all of you know, Congress has passed legislation that provides billions of dollars in funding to help cities become more broadband ready. Federal, state, local governments, along with the private sector, are working hand in hand to try to ensure that those funds are spent efficiently and effectively. But more than that, there's things that you all are doing and things that you can do to help ensure that your cities become broadband ready. Things like putting in place procedures that help facilitate deployment of infrastructure, making sure that there's appropriate permitting staff in the permitting offices, making sure that the fees that you charge for access to the internet, access to infrastructure, as well as for permitting, are reasonable. Embracing innovative constructive techniques that lower both the time and cost to deploy fiber. All of us at Crown Castle are so very excited to work with all of you to make these broadband dreams a reality. We look forward to the partnership in the future, and again, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Teddy. Now, as you've seen during my presidency, technology and innovation are important themes for me. That's why I'm so excited for our next armchair discussion about the recent bipartisan CHIPS bill that passed Congress. The bill includes major investments in broadband, semiconductor manufacturing, as well as once-in-a-generation funding to upskill our workforce and ensure that everyone has the opportunity to participate in today's economy. I want to now call on our new Technology and Innovation Standing Committee Chair, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell, to share brief remarks and to introduce our panel.
Morning. It's a pleasure once again to see you all and be with you. What a great conference has been, right? I mean, this is, for me at least, has been extremely enjoyable and informational. Thank you very much. As the mayor of Seattle, I know a thing or two about technology. From the promise of e-commerce to cloud computing, there's a good chance that you're using products from some of Seattle's biggest companies right now. And technology and innovation is something that impacts all of us, particularly your cities and the people within the cities. It's become more and more ubiquitous in our lives, and citizens are expecting better digital services from our governments, so governments and government functions are as easy as some of our favorite apps. Because of this evolution, the conference last summer elevated the Technology and Innovation Task Force and turned it into a standing committee, which I am honored to chair. This change, I think, not only reflects our commitment to these issues from digital equity to cybersecurity, but also reflected in our country's recent investments in technology and science. The bipartisan infrastructure law passed in 2021 is nearly $65 billion in Internet for All initiatives, which will help us bridge the digital divide and make broadband internet access faster, more affordable, and more accessible throughout the country. You may recall that last summer, the CHIPS and Science Act was passed by Congress, recommitting our nation to semiconductor manufacturing right here in America, and aims to transform our country's economic and national security. These are critical initiatives. These two initiatives, Internet for All and the CHIPS program, are both key priorities for our next guest. For a discussion on transforming America with investments in broadband, chips, and science, I want to now invite the Honorable Gina Raimondo, the 40th Secretary of Commerce, who will be in our conversation with one of our leaders here at the conference on semiconductor manufacturing and workforce development, Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego. Let's give them a hand.
Oh, that's you.
Thank you, Mayor Harrell, for your great work and the introduction. We are so honored to have Secretary Raimondo, who has been leading and creating jobs her entire career, whether as treasurer, governor, and now as secretary. We were honored to have you in Arizona last month with President Biden and our Senator Mark Kelly to celebrate our largest ever economic development announcement, TSMC making chips for iPhones and others in Arizona. It would not have happened without the CHIPS and Science Act. So thank you for your leadership. Mayors here would like to know, how do you get a CHIPS investment in your community? What can mayors do to help attract projects? And what does success look like?
So first of all, hello, mayors. I love being with you. Do we have the new mayor of Providence? Is he in the house? Smiley, Brett Smiley, hello. I'm former governor of Rhode Island, so I need to call out my good friend, Brett Smiley. Anyway, having been a governor for almost 7 years, I have a huge respect and appreciation for mayors. It might be the hardest job in politics and the most important because you're closest to the people. So if I say nothing else, I want you to know at the Commerce Department, we love and respect mayors, and we want to work with you. We want to be super accessible to you on chips, on manufacturing, EDA, broadband. If you don't know us, get to know us because we want to help you meet the needs of people. In terms of chips, as Kate said, this is a huge opportunity. It's $50 billion. You can basically work with semiconductor manufacturing companies and their suppliers to make your city, your state, an attractive place for them to choose. Now, Mayor Gallego is the expert in this, so whatever she's done to make that happen, you really should be the one telling your colleagues. But, you know, I think all of you do a ton of work in business development. We want to work with you in partnership. There'll have to be state incentives, city incentives, federal incentives, working with workforce, working with universities to attract and recruit these big semiconductor companies. And as I said, we'll work with you in partnership.
Wonderful. One of the things that's been very important to our success is our partnerships with universities, particularly Arizona State University. We want to make sure we're a hub for innovation. How can mayors harness our nation's competitiveness, economy, and national security? How does the CHIPS Act promote, CHIPS and Science Act promote research and development?
Yeah, so there's, like I said, we're going to invest about $40 billion incentivizing individual companies. So the mayor and I were together about a month ago with TSMC, which is a huge semiconductor company, putting an operation in Arizona. So certain companies will receive incentives. There's another $11 billion for just research and development. And so any of you mayors who are lucky enough to have big colleges and universities in your communities, you should check this out. Because this money will go all across America. We're going to split it up into a number of different grants, and this will also be public-private partnerships. So if you have, you know, a land-grant university or really any university partner who we could invest with in connection with the private company, it's all about taking great ideas coming out of labs and colleges and universities and turning them into products that we can make here in America.
When you joined the Workforce Committee a year ago at our winter meeting, you talked about Internet for All. So can you give us an update on connectivity and how mayors can support the work you're doing?
Yes, I appreciate you bringing that up because this is a big deal, and I want to make sure everybody here knows what's going on. Internet for All, as the mayor said, is an initiative being run by the Department of Commerce. In this case, we have another $50 billion to invest all across America with a single goal. Make sure every American has access to the internet in their home, in their small business, in their farm, at a cost that's affordable. Right now, there are tens of millions of Americans who don't have that, probably many of your constituents. And enough is enough. If you don't have internet, you can't go to school online, you can't see a doctor online, you can't run a restaurant or operate a family farm or a small business. So we're on a mission to make sure that 5 or 10 years from now, every American has affordable internet. Affordability is a key piece of the puzzle. So if you're an urban mayor, maybe everybody has access to the internet, but if it's $100 a month, what good is that? So we have affordability grants. If you represent a more rural area, then it's an issue of actual connectivity. Here's the important point. We are giving money out in the big grants to states. Every state has to provide to the Department of Commerce a state internet plan. If your governor has not already reached out to you to get your feedback for the state plan, get on the governor. Get on the governor's office, tell him I sent you. Get on the governor, get on the governor's office, get on the state broadband office. This thing will only work if the governors work with mayors and town councils and city councils to get the granular detail. And it's affordability and access. The Department of Commerce has also set up a single point person for every state. If you don't know who your state point person is, we have a website. It's called internetforall.gov. Pretty simple, internetforall.gov. Go on there, click on your state, figure out who your point of contact is, call that person, and figure out where is your state in the development of their state plan, and make certain that they're listening to you. The last thing I'll say is the big money is for the state plans. There's also digital equity grants and tribal grants. That money can be used for affordability, to provide laptops, to provide digital literacy. Again, if you need help, internetforall.gov, call the Commerce Department. This money is going out this calendar year. These decisions are being made in the coming months. So I would just encourage you to, get engaged and make sure your voice and your data is listened to by the state plans.
Wonderful. So we have our homework. We got to talk to our tech employers, our universities, and our governors. We're going to make sure that we implement as effectively as possible the great tools the administration has given us. So it's the great way to celebrate today, the 2nd anniversary of the Biden-Harris administration. And Secretary, we are so glad that you continue to join us and partner with mayors.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I'm psyched to be here. We did this 2 years ago. We met, the first time we met was in the White House and with a handful of mayors, and we were talking about chips. How do we work together to get it done? We were talking about the bipartisan infrastructure law. How do we work together to get it done? And here we are now. We got it done. And now it's over to you to deliver. Awesome.
Thank you, Secretary Raimondo, for being with us today. Our next speaker is certainly no stranger to this organization. Most of us have known him since his tenure as mayor of South Bend. And many of us served alongside him here at the Conference of Mayors, where he was a member of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Advisory Board and chaired our automation task force. He's been busy this past year. As Secretary of the United States Department of Transportation, he oversees the department that received the largest share of these new infrastructure dollars. He joins us today to share remarks about a growing transportation problem we all must confront more forcefully, and that is safety. So mayors, please welcome home Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, what a treat. Thanks so much for the warm welcome. Thanks, Mayor Suarez, for your leadership and the introduction. It always feels good to be among America's mayors. And we got a lot to talk about, so thank you for having me through. I'll just begin by recognizing that the job of mayor has only become more demanding and more vital since I wore the title not that long ago. And so I want to salute the leadership of America's mayors. I, as mayor myself, always look forward to the winter meeting. It was one of the things in the year I was always ready for because it brought the chance to compare experiences with peers, but also the opportunity to connect with the administration and make sure that we understood how to use federal tools in order to help serve our residents, and of course, making sure that Washington understood our needs on the ground. And through the pandemic and many other challenges, you have faced choices that were unimaginable to municipal leaders just a few years ago. But I'll also say that I can only imagine what it would have been like to be a mayor in the midst of an infrastructure season like the one that we're living in right now. when I was mayor, we were still waiting with increasing cynicism each passing year for the so-called infrastructure week that would come and go without a result in this city. And that's why I'm so glad to be here today. Not just because I'm always glad to be around fellow mayors, but because I'm now in a position to share with you updates on how we're doing and a little bit on how we can do more together as we enter the second year of President Biden's historic program of infrastructure investment. And in the middle of what I believe will be remembered in American history as an infrastructure decade. It's been a little over a year since President Biden signed that infrastructure package, and precisely 2 years since this administration came in and the president took office. And it's been a remarkable year. Across the country, often in partnership with city leaders, we have begun improvement on 3,700 bridges. We've improved over 69,000 miles of roads and highways. We've funded over 1,000 zero-emission buses around the country, and we are just getting started. In the year and years ahead, we're going to move more and more from concept to execution, from application to announcement to groundbreaking to ribbon cutting. And yes, I share the instinctive mayoral impatience for getting to that ribbon cutting moment. We are going to continue working with all levels of government and wherever possible, working on a bipartisan basis, just as we did with major help from you to get this package through Congress in the first place. And yes, that includes multiple opportunities amounting to billions of dollars in investment, where there is the possibility for cities to come directly to the Department of Transportation for direct federal support. So I believe this is one of the best times ever to be involved in transportation in America. It's a chance not only to imagine, but to implement, not only to dream, but to design and then to build. It is a season of America putting its money where our mouth is. But we should also talk about the other side of the coin in American transportation. This is one of the most promising and dynamic times ever for transportation in this country, but also one of the most challenging, as many of you have experienced firsthand. Aging infrastructure has already caught up to us in many places and across all of the modes of transportation. A slow-moving crisis was then exacerbated by a once-in-a-century pandemic and by industry practices across the transportation sector that have left very little resilience in many of our most important systems. We've seen the results of these long-standing problems materialize in many ways, from shipping containers backed up at our ports to airline cancellations during peak travel seasons. We have confronted those challenges and we will continue to do so, but they are not going to be resolved overnight. Today, I want to focus on what is maybe the most acute and devastating problem in our entire transportation system. And I want to focus on it partly because it deserves more attention than it gets, and partly because of your indispensable role in confronting it. We need to talk about roadway deaths in America. Somehow this issue gets dramatically less attention than many of the other transportation issues we face, from airline headaches to container shipping bottlenecks. And I think that might actually be precisely because when it comes to roadway deaths, we're so used to it. But we shouldn't be. Many of you, for example, are rightly focused on confronting the scourge of gun violence. I want to remind you that the loss of life in traffic crashes in our communities is almost identical in its proportions to the loss of life to gun violence. Almost 43,000 people died in traffic crashes in 2021, and preliminary data are telling us we're going to see similar numbers for 2022. It is not inevitable, it is not acceptable, and it deserves our sustained attention, especially when you consider that this is another area, like gun violence, where Americans experience more pain and worse results than our peers in other developed countries. Recently, I met a group of safety advocates, and it is impossible to listen to their stories without it leaving an impression on you. The fifth grader named Sammy, who was killed on the street on his way to soccer practice. The mom and U.S. Foreign Service officer who came back here from a stint working in a war zone in Ukraine only to be killed by a truck riding her bike. But of course, you don't need to hear other people's stories to know how important this is, because if any one of us in this room is to count the number of people we know killed in traffic crashes, we'll have to use more than both hands. We are so used to it, it is almost as if we have spent our lives in a country going through a war. I want you to know what we're doing to change that, and I want to ask for your help. About a year ago, our department put forward our National Roadway Safety Strategy, and we're at work right now to execute that strategy along with our many partners, including local government. I encourage you to get to know this strategy. It's got 5 areas of focus: safer drivers, safer roads, safer speeds, safer vehicles, and a better standard of post-crash care. Our ultimate goal, which we have officially adopted, is to get traffic deaths down to 0. I want to pause on that goal because if you're like me, if you've focused your administration on specific and attainable goals, this may sound strange, lofty, or even absurd, but it shouldn't, and here's why. First, I would ask you how many traffic deaths you would consider to be acceptable in theory. And here, I hope we all agree the answer is 0. But I know that might seem like an unrealistic ideal. So let's turn to a very real, concrete example from another mode of transportation, aviation. For all of the headaches that we have had in aviation, this is a mode of transportation which relies on rocketing passengers through the atmosphere at close to the speed of sound, several miles above the ground, in a metal tube propelled by igniting thousands of gallons of explosive jet fuel. It's how most of you got here. And it is not uncommon, in fact, more common than not, to see a year where the number of deaths in U.S. commercial aviation is 0. Let's think about that. And the most important reason for adopting Vision Zero, and the one I hope will most appeal to you as mayors, is just adopting that goal and taking it seriously has been shown to yield concrete results. No one thinks 0 can happen overnight, but we have seen that when cities aim for 0, they start getting closer to it. Fewer crashes, fewer fatalities, specific, measurable, meaningful change. In fact, while we are far off from 0 traffic deaths nationally, several cities have not only adopted that goal, but achieved it. And as is so often the case, mayors have led the way. Last year, Jersey City, second largest city in America's most densely populated state, saw 0 traffic deaths on its road. Mayor Phillip and his team deserve great credit for their focus on safety. Hoboken, nearby, had its 4th straight year with 0 traffic deaths. Mayor Bala, that is a remarkable accomplishment for which you and your whole community should be proud. In the Midwest, Evanston, Illinois, and Edina, Minnesota have both seen several years without a single traffic death, thanks to robust Complete Streets programs, anti-speeding efforts, and other measures. So Mayor Bliss, Mayor Hovland, we salute you. No, we won't get to 0 deaths nationwide anytime soon, but there were 7 mid-sized cities that saw 0 deaths for at least 5 years during the 2010s. So what if a few years from now, we could say that that number had grown to 15 cities, or 30, or 50? When you ask the mayors of those cities how they did it, they point to common solutions: lower speed limits in residential areas, protected bike lanes and bus lanes, curb extensions, high visibility crosswalks, more frequent traffic signals, but also using the moral authority and visibility of the mayor's office to encourage a fundamentally safer culture for drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians. So here at the winter meeting where leaders share strategies that work, I hope you'll take the opportunity to do that when it comes to road safety and continue the dialogue with us at DOT as well. And I want to emphasize that in this, as in so many other shared policy areas around climate, around equity, around economic development, we are not just cheering you on, we are funding this good work. There's never going to be enough funding to support every good idea and project, but there's more than we've ever had before. And we continue to proceed based on the principle that the great project ideas will not come out of Washington, but more of the funding should. Just in the year since I was last before this gathering, we've rolled out billions for safety efforts through our discretionary grant programs. Our Reconnecting Communities program is going to help improve safety in historically marginalized communities who have often faced the highest rates of traffic deaths. Our RAISE and Infra grants have funded dozens of safety projects in cities and towns of every size across the country. Just last year, I got to be with Mayor Castor in Tampa, Mayor Bynum in Tulsa, Mayor Warren in Fontana, and so many more of you to celebrate the projects we're able to support. Our CRISI program, our railway crossing elimination program, which I know will be of particular interest to those smaller communities where folks are waiting for way too long for those rail crossings, and there's a safety issue at stake. It's going to help upgrade or eliminate those dangerous crossings. And in just a few days, we will be announcing the winners of the first year of our Safe Roads and Streets for All program, which delivers funds, again, directly to local communities. And by the way, a lot of that funding is for planning, so I hope you'll talk with your public works and transportation officials and your communities about how to prepare for next year's round of funding, because my favorite thing about where we stand in this infrastructure law is that we're just getting into year 2 out of 5. There's a lot more where this came from. And it's not just about the programs with safety in their name. Done right, every infrastructure choice is also a safety choice, just like it's a choice about our economy and about our climate. So please, keep innovating, keep advancing, and we will keep supporting you however we can. I truly believe we're going to look back on these years when you were leading your cities as a pivotal time for our country and for American communities, and I know that those communities are in good hands. So I'm looking forward to our continued work together to make the absolute most of this historic season, and I can't wait to see what we're going to achieve working together. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for the chance to address you today.
I would posit that the Secretary is the bravest cabinet official that we have. And it's probably not for the reasons that you think. It's because he went 6 minutes over and he cut into the Attorney General's time. I mean, that takes a lot of courage. It's now my pleasure to welcome back to the Conference of Mayors the Attorney General of the United States. The Attorney General has devoted practically his whole career to the pursuit of justice as a federal prosecutor for the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C., and then in the Department of Justice. He supervised investigations and prosecutions of national importance, including the Oklahoma City bombing, the Unabomber, and Montana Freeman cases. Under his leadership, the Department of Justice is dedicated to upholding the rule of law, keeping our country safe, and protecting the civil rights of all Americans. In the nearly 2 years he has been at the helm, the department has implemented a comprehensive strategy for reducing violent crime, strengthened firearms regulation by updating the definition of firearm and related parts for the first time since 1968, published model legislation to help states enact extreme risk protection order laws, made combating hate crimes and one of the department's highest priorities, and developed the first national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. All of these efforts address priority issues for mayors and their cities and for our conference. Attorney General Merrick Garland, it is our honor to have you with us today to address America's mayors.
Good morning, everybody. Mayor Suarez, thank you very much for that overly kind introduction. And it is great to be back here with all of you for the 91st winter meeting. The United States Department of Justice, as Mayor Suarez said, has a wide-ranging and urgent mission to uphold the rule of law, to keep Americans safe, and to protect civil rights. But we cannot do this work alone. The mayors gathered in this room are the Justice Department's indispensable partners. So on behalf of the entire Department of Justice, I want to thank you and for your leadership and for your continued partnership. The strength of that partnership has never been more important than it is today, particularly when it comes to confronting the fentanyl epidemic. Across the country, fentanyl is devastating families and communities. According to the CDC, more than 107,000 people in the United States died of drug overdoses in 2021, and about 2/3 of those deaths involved synthetic opioids, primarily fentanyl. This nearly invisible poison is 50 times more potent than heroin. Just 2 milligrams of fentanyl, the amount that could fit at the tip of a pencil, is a potentially lethal dose. And increasingly, we are finding that many people who are taking fentanyl do not even know that they are taking it. That is because violent drug cartels are manufacturing and moving fake pills that are designed to look exactly like name brand drugs. Instead, the fake pills contain deadly amounts of fentanyl. The DEA has seen a sharp increase in the deadliness of fentanyl-laced fake prescription pills across the country. In 2022, 6 out of 10 fentanyl-laced fake prescription pills that were seized contained a potentially lethal dose. That is an astounding increase from an already terrible statistic of 2021, when 4 out of 10 such pills contained a potentially lethal dose. In addition, we know that the cartels are marketing rainbow-colored pills that look like candy or prescription medication. They often come in a tablet form or in a block that resembles sidewalk chalk. These pills, too, often contain fentanyl. And we know from lab testing that this so-called rainbow fentanyl is just as dangerous and deadly as other forms. Each of you understands better than most the human toll of this crisis. As mayors, you have witnessed firsthand the devastation wrought by fentanyl poisonings and overdoses. You have seen the lives lost. You know the families and communities that have been devastated. And you have witnessed the additional demands and dangers being placed on the police officers who must respond to this crisis. Recently, DEA Administrator Ann Milgram and I met with the families of victims of fentanyl poisoning from around the DC area. The victims range from 17 to 64 years old. Among them were gifted musicians, athletes, and loving friends. A parent who spent his Sundays after church playing football. A young woman who was planning to go to community college. A young man who was looking forward to being a father. Each of them was killed by fentanyl poisoning. Each story was tragic and heartbreaking. Too many lives have been lost to drug poisoning and overdose. Too many families, too many communities have been shattered by this crisis. The Department of Justice is using every tool at its disposal to save American lives. We are working tirelessly to get deadly fentanyl out of our communities. We are doing everything in our power to dismantle and hold accountable the cartels that put it there. We are dedicating our resources to supporting the programming that addresses the public health challenges of addiction and abuse, and we are doing all of this in collaboration with our state, local, tribal, and territorial partners. First, our agents and prosecutors are working closely with their partners across the country to conduct investigations, arrest traffickers, and seize deadly fentanyl. Last year, DEA agents conducted investigations in communities across the country, including dozens of cartel-linked investigations. In 2022, the DEA and its law enforcement partners seized more than 50.6 million fentanyl-laced fake prescription pills. That is more than double the amount seized in 2021. The DEA has also seized more than 10,000 pounds of fentanyl powder. Together, these seizures represent more than 379 million deadly doses of fentanyl. That much fentanyl could kill every single American. We are also working closely with our partners at home and abroad to hold accountable those who are responsible for this crisis. DEA is focusing its efforts on disrupting the 2 cartels that are responsible for significant quantities of fentanyl crossing the U.S.-Mexico border, the Sinaloa and the Jalisco New Generation cartels. Last week, I joined President Biden and other cabinet members in Mexico City for a meeting with our counterparts in the Mexican government. There, we discussed dramatically stepping up our country's joint efforts to combat fentanyl trafficking. This includes disrupting the flow of precursor chemicals coming from the People's Republic of China to Mexico and dismantling the clandestine labs where cartels use those chemicals to synthesize fentanyl in Mexico. And in districts across the country, our agents and prosecutors are working every day to bring to justice those who endanger our communities with deadly drugs. Just yesterday, for example, in the Middle District of Georgia, an indictment was unsealed charging 9 defendants with conspiring to possess with intent to distribute methamphetamine and fentanyl. 2 of the defendants were also indicted on firearms charges. And just last week, in the Southern District of California, an individual was sentenced for distributing fentanyl that resulted in the fatal overdose of a 30-year-old. In the District of Minnesota, 2 individuals were sentenced for their roles in a fentanyl trafficking conspiracy targeting the Red Lake Indian Reservation. In the District of Colorado, an individual was sentenced to life in prison for conspiring to distribute fentanyl and distributing fentanyl, resulting in death. Evidence presented at trial established that between 2017 and 2018, the defendant imported tens of thousands of pills laced with fentanyl from Mexico to the United States, resulting in a young man's death in 2019. In the Western District of Virginia, we charge an individual with conspiring to possess with intent to distribute fentanyl, methamphetamine, heroin, and cocaine. He was also charged with possessing a firearm in furtherance of his drug trafficking. The defendant is alleged to have possessed over 10,000 fentanyl pills and 1 kilogram of fentanyl powder. And earlier this month, in the Eastern District of Virginia, we secured the guilty plea of an individual who sold pills to a 14-year-old. The pills were purported to be a brand name painkiller. In fact, they were laced with fentanyl. 5 days after the sale, a 14-year-old died of a fentanyl overdose. These cases are emblematic of the work our agents and prosecutors are doing every day, together with their state and local partners, to disrupt fentanyl trafficking and save lives. Now, in addition to our enforcement efforts, we are committed to supporting communities to meet the public health challenges of addiction and substance abuse. Last year, our Office of Justice Programs announced grants totaling more than $340 million to address the overdose epidemic. Those awards go toward supporting drug and treatment courts, residential treatment programs, prevention and harm reduction services, recovery support, services to opioid-affected youth, and community-based strategies that improve continuity of care. In the coming year, our Office of Justice Programs expects to make available even more funding for these programs. These programs will help expand access to support and treatment that people struggling with addiction and substance abuse need to recover. As with all of the department's efforts to keep our country safe and combat violent crime, the success of our work continues to depend upon close collaboration with our partners. All of our 94 United States Attorney's offices continue to work alongside their state and local partners to develop and implement district-specific violent crime reduction strategies. And the department's grant-making components continue to provide financial assistance to local law enforcement agencies. Last year, through our Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, or COPS, we awarded more than $139 million in funding for the COPS hiring program. These grants enable law enforcement agencies across the country to hire additional full-time law enforcement professionals. In the coming year, we will award even more, with over $224 million dedicated to the COPS hiring program. Our grant-making components also offer support, targeted technical assistance, and help to agencies to uplift best practices in the field. And each of our law enforcement components continues to work with its state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement partners to seize illegal guns and deadly drugs and to apprehend the most dangerous fugitives. We are grateful for the continued partnership of America's mayors in this work, and we are committed to continue working with you to protect our communities. Thank you all very much.
I'm out of gimmicks, guys. Thank you so much, Attorney General Garland, for taking time to be with us today and for all you are doing on behalf of our cities and our nation. And mayors, business partners, and guests, thank you for all of your contributions over the past 4 days of this conference, throughout our plenary sessions and breakout meetings. We put ourselves in a really strong position to make 2023 a bright year for America's cities. I'd like to close this session by inviting mayors going to the White House to get on the buses, which will begin loading at noon. There will be boxed lunches in the lobby for mayors going to the White House and lunch available in this room for those not going to the White House. With that, this final plenary session of our 91st winter meeting is officially concluded. Thank you all. Thank you.